I want to first start by essentially dividing up the admission process or the way colleges view you, the student, into four categories: grades, testing, passion, and community. And so we'll go into these four as we go. Oftentimes people tend to favor the first two over the last two. And if there's anything that I want for you guys to get out of this video, is that if anything, the last two categories are just as important, if not more. So let's start by first talking about classes. One of the things that has stuck with me in my experience with preparing for these elite top level schools is this idea of the 1% rule. In almost anything measurable, colleges like Harvard or Stanford or Princeton or Yale or MIT are going to look for students that are in the top percentile of every category. So that applies to grades as well. These colleges are looking for students that are trying to take the hardest classes available to them and who get the highest scores in those classes. So obviously, as we all know, that entails being an A student, taking, difficult college level classes, but it's also slightly more complicated than that, because some of us go to schools where you have 20 APs offered. Some of us go to schools where there's 7 APs are offered. And then there's some of us like me, for instance, who went to a school where 0 APs are offered. And so in that situation, you're probably thinking to yourself, how am I supposed to be competitive in this category of grades? And so the thing I want to get out for all of you watching is that these colleges are looking for the top percent within each context. So what that means is that they want to see you do the best you can in your given situation. So if you go to a school that offers, let's say, 6 APs, and you know that you have a friend in another school who's taking 8 APs, let's say, because his school has more APs offered, don't sweat it. Just take all the APs you can in your school, try and get A's in all of them, and because by virtue of the fact that you've taken every single difficult class that your school has offered, you're just as competitive, if not more, than your fellow at the other school who may not have taken as many difficult classes relative to that were offered. So everything is based on context. For me to put myself as an example, as I said, our school did not offer any AP classes, but they did offer what are called advanced honors classes. So they're basically around the same difficulty as an AP, but they don't have the AP credit or the reputation and whatnot. So what I did was, to make myself competitive, I went out of my way to take every single advanced class that the school offered. And so by doing that, I realized I didn't have to take an AP because I'd already done the best I could in my situation, in my given context. The other thing I also want to talk about is this idea of establishing a balance. And what I mean is that for those of you out there who do go to schools that offer 20 or 30 APs, that does not mean that you have to take 20 APs or you have to take 25 APs, because like I said, these colleges look at 4 categories. So if you put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, if you spend all your time trying to get every single AP down, getting every single A, then you're not going to have enough time to be able to work on standardized testing, to be able to work on extracurriculars, to be able to work on community service. And so in the end, you're not going to be competitive. So finding a balance is key. From what I've seen from the people I've talked to, the golden number of APs to take is usually between 8 to 12. So if you can get between 8 to 12 classes under your belt, then you're good. Don't take any more than that. The other thing also is that a lot of students are very discouraged about applying to Ivy Leagues because let's say they had 1 B on their transcript. And so I want to make it clear that although a B is not something you would like to have on your resume if you're applying to Ivy League, and most admits don't have B's on their resume, it is possible for you to still be competitive. The way that you're able to make up for that B is by adding more pizzazz to the other categories. So it's all about having a balance. The other thing I'd also add is for those of you who are maybe scared or don't want to get a B in classes, that there are tips and tricks to make sure that you can be the best student you can, the most competitive student you can even within the academic category. And what I mean by that is, first, I'm sure every student has a weak spot in classes. For instance, for me, my weak spot was physics. Maybe some of you can empathize with that. And so when I took the advanced honors physics class in my school, what I did was, because I knew that this was a difficult subject for me, I made sure to set time, especially for that class, out of all of the subjects in my school schedule. And I also made sure to go to all the office hours that were set by the teacher, whether that was during lunch, whether that was after school, and making sure to ask as many questions as possible and writing down as many notes as possible. And the final thing I would also add about being able to get an A in a difficult subject is this idea that you should work smart and hard. A lot of people talk about working hard, which is important. Discipline is incredibly important. But if working hard means you're just staring at a textbook for 6 hours, then that's not going to get you the A you want. So you're going to have to learn how to be smart, how to work smart, how to work efficiently. The other thing I'll add before I move to the second category is the idea of GPA. A lot of us are very fixated with GPA. And I can tell you personally, when I was binging on those YouTube videos of students that got into Harvard and they're talking about 4.8, 4.9, 5.0 GPA, I'm a little worried because I'm like, these numbers are a little bit out of my field. In fact, they're impossible for me to reach because our school doesn't offer enough weighted classes to even reach a 4.8 or a 4.9. And so the same message that I put about grades applies here, meaning the goal to be competitive is to have the best GPA you can relative to your context. So to put myself as an example, I think it's 4.4 GPA, which is pretty much average for most Harvard admins, right? It's not top of the line. It's not the highest ultra competitive you can get. But what made me competitive, I believe, in terms of my GPA was the fact that it was the highest in the class. And this was listed on the school report. So given in my context, even though maybe there's someone else applying that has a 4.6, that 4.4 would actually have more impact and more value than the 4.6 of another person if that 4.6 wasn't the highest. So again, it's about percentile. If you can land in the top percent, then you're good.